Kia ora and welcome to today's webinar celebrating volunteerism. Just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join and to be here tonight. A quick note just to let you guys know that both that nice little goof and everything else tonight is going to be getting recorded. So you'll be able to see this later if you have any problems or weren't able to stay for the entire time. We do have a pretty packed evening, so we're going to go ahead and get started with a karakia and then to jump into things. Te hui, whaia te mātauranga kia marama kia whai take nā mahia katoa. Tu mia, tu kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tato kia tato katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge and understanding, have purpose in all that you do, stand tall, stand strong, let us show respect for each other. So, just a little bit about ā. So the Australasian Women and Emergencies Network, we honor the collective energies and mana volunteers in Aotearoa, and just wanted to let everyone know that we're really thrilled to host a volunteer panel discussion during National Volunteer Week. This year's theme is Whira Te Tangata, or Weave the People Together. And I wanted to acknowledge the two women who are on the screen, Bridget and Amanda, who are some of the founders of ā, along with all of the other women that have played an important role in developing ā. The success of the organization has really been built on a contribution of a series of dedicated volunteers, and we're just really grateful to those who give their time and skills to build our amazing network, like the 5 women who are here to talk to you tonight. So just a little bit of kind of structure and admin before we get too far along the track. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody kind of knew what we'd be expecting tonight. So first off, we're going to start with some kind of introductions to each of the 5 women and their organizations. We're going to have a discussion with the panel members, a little bit more in depth about their volunteering experiences, and then probably what all of you are here and more interested in tonight, which is an open Q&A session engaging with our speakers. So like I mentioned, the session will be recorded and available online, so you don't have to worry if you can't make it the whole time. You also don't have to wait until the very end. If you do have a question, feel free to type it into the chat. If one of the women isn't speaking and is able to answer, they'll do their best. Otherwise, the questions will be there when we're ready to roll into the Q&A at the end. And you can feel free to kind of tailor those questions for either all 5 of them or one person or one organization in particular if there's something you really are interested in knowing. Cool. So that being said, I wanted to point out 5 of the ladies who you should be able to see as co-hosts up on the screen with me. So first off tonight, we're going to have Ali Kurd from Land Search and Rescue, Leah Hyde from Fire and Emergency New Zealand, Michelle Gilman from Taskforce Kiwi, Michaela Height from New Zealand Red Cross and the Disaster Welfare Support Teams, and Natalie Giles from the New Zealand Response Team and Wellington Emergency Response Team. So, with that being said, tonight we are joined with Ali Kurd as our first speaker. So Ali is a volunteer with Land Search and Rescue. Land Search and Rescue is an incorporated society consisting of over 3,000 unpaid professionals who provide specialist search and rescue services to police and the Rescue Coordination Center. So Ali has taken on multiple roles, including operational field member, incident management team member, trainer, and committee member. She's also been an active incident management team member for the Ruapehu Alpine Rescue Organization and has held significant positions in Southland Land Search and Rescue. Her dedication to the organization is evident in her commitment to training and preparing different personnel for various SAR or search and rescue environments, including wilderness, suburban, and alpine settings, as well as specialized teams in incident management. in her free time, because I'm sure Ali has so much of that, she's committed to the future of search and rescue in Aotearoa, New Zealand, through independent research projects, as well as working on her PhD in part-time and looking at how SAR volunteers can better utilize emergency management. So over to you, Ali.
Kia ora, thanks Amy. Kia ora koutou everyone. My name is Ali Kurd and I am a volunteer with Land Search and Rescue New Zealand. So as Amy alluded to, we have over 3,500 unpaid professionals. We have about 64 groups located across Aotearoa, New Zealand, and this includes various specialist groups as well. So the likes of, we have dogs, we have canyon SAR teams, we have alpine rescue teams, which is one of the teams that I'm a part of. And we also have various other unpaid professionals that support us in the roles that we do. So we are extremely grateful. We're available 24/7, 365 days of the year as most volunteers. And we do everything from searching within the suburban environment to below the bushline, above the bushline, and everywhere in between. So I've been a part of the organisation for about 7 years, and I have, but because of my job, I've been very fortunate to be part of different teams across New Zealand, including Nelson, Southland, Wellington, and now the Ruapehu Alpine Rescue Organisation. So I've been extremely, extremely fortunate with my volunteering career. I've had a lot of really great mentorship from both men and women throughout the years. And I've also found that camaraderie and those relationships that we tend to build within the search and rescue sector are just second to none. And I'm sure all the other lovely ladies that are speaking tonight would agree that we do it for the love, but we also do it because we just meet some amazing like-minded people in everything that we do. And for us within Land Search and Rescue, it's bringing home those lost, missing and injured. And from July 2020 to June 2023, we managed to bring home 399 people who otherwise may not have been able to get back. We're certainly on track this year to be reaching those numbers and higher. And particularly last weekend, we had quite a significant weekend within the land search and rescue environment. We had quite a few what we call despondents, and they made quite high profile news items within New Zealand. And I think that's one of the big parts of what we do is regardless of who we're looking for, it's always really satisfying to be able to bring them home, regardless of the outcome, and bringing closure to those families. So that's certainly one of the reasons why we do it. But yeah, that's just a very quick synopsis of Land Search and Rescue New Zealand.
Kia ora. Thank you, Ali. Sorry, just a little bit of slide delay. So after Leah, you're privileged, or after Ali, we're privileged to have Leah joining us here tonight. So Leah Hyde is a mother volunteer firefighter, chief fire officer, and she also works for the organization that she volunteers for as a community readiness and recovery advisor for FENZ, Fire and Emergency New Zealand. So Leah is a national wildfire deployment task force crew leader, which is also quite a mouthful to be saying, and part of the Region Coordination Center for Emergency Response and IMT team member. She also works as an ahikura practitioner, which involves working with youth involved in fire setting behaviors. In both Leah's work and volunteering, she's passionate about empowering people to build resilience and self-sufficiency and is driven to educate and support the community she serves. Leah values critical thinking and seeks the why to help foster growth and improvement. Her goal is to support others in creating a better future, one step at a time, while continually learning and improving her own path along the way. So take it away, Leah.
Thanks, Amy. So first of all, thank you for having me here tonight, and it's an absolute honour to be in the company of our other wahine who volunteer their time and skills to our communities. To give you a bit of a background on fire and emergency, for our frontline firefighters, volunteers make up 86% of those numbers. So we deliver the bulk of the services in our communities. So numbers wise, we have around 11,800 volunteer firefighters and 1,800 paid firefighters. We have 63 fire stations across the country, and out of those, 559 of them are crewed solely by volunteers. What this means to the public from an external point of view is that we all operate the same and provide the same seamless service. And I actually think that this is a testament to the education and the dedication and the skill of some of our volunteers, that they can't see the difference between us, which is fantastic. So as firefighters, our role in the community is ever increasing. We attend motor vehicle accidents, medical calls, we do search and rescue, we do large animal rescues, we attend hazardous substances incidents, we obviously go to structure fires, vegetation fires, we are involved in the weather events and the flooding. So the extent of these incidents has increased dramatically over the last few years, I think, as everybody has seen. So I joined as a volunteer for fire and emergency 8 years ago when my son was just over 2 years old. And I was looking to join an organisation that would pose a good challenge, where I could be part of something that was meaningful, where you can make a tangible difference in people's lives. Where as firefighters, we're often responsible for members of the public who are at their most vulnerable or in distress or in danger. Sometimes they're dying or they're deceased. And to me, that's a real privilege to be a part of something like that. As Amy mentioned, I do work for fire and emergency as well. So volunteering as a chief fire officer probably adds about at least 15 hours on top of my average work week to my week, but in a sense, because we too are on call 364 days of the year, 24/7, as a chief fire officer, it sometimes feels like a full-time job. I am part of the National Wildfire Deployment Task Force, so I've been in several wildfires that have affected communities across New Zealand. And as a crew leader, I lead teams of firefighters where we're tasked for long duration firefighting. I became the chief of our fire station in 2021, which was a tricky time to step into such a role because we're in the midst of COVID, we had lockdowns, we were restricted in the way we operated, crew morale was quite low, and we faced a lot of challenges at that time. In 2022, I joined Fire and Emergency in a paid role as a community readiness and recovery advisor, and to me, that's a great benefit because I can bring both backgrounds to the table. So I have a rural lens, a volunteering lens. I can see challenges for crews, brigades, and communities. Working and volunteering for fire and emergency has brought me so many opportunities. I've been to some amazing conferences. I'm learning sign language. I work with deaf community. Done some filming resources, and I'm on project teams at a national level to look into our wildfire response for the future. So it's a pleasure to be part of this panel tonight. I hope we can provide some insights into volunteering and the amazing experiences and opportunities that it brings.
Kia ora. Thank you, Leo. So moving along, if my PowerPoint will transition to the next slide and the next lady. we are fortunate to have Michelle with us. So Michelle Gilman is an active volunteer with Taskforce Kiwi and is their National Volunteer Experience Manager, which is a voluntary role for the organization that touches every aspect across the volunteer life cycle for Taskforce Kiwis, almost 600 volunteers around the country. So Michelle is also a volunteer with Christchurch City Council's Emergency Support Team and Selwyn District Council's EOC team. Michelle is self-employed and spends her days working with Lifeline Utilities and other organizations with high-risk operations across the South Island to reduce risk, improve operational readiness, and build capability and emergency response. She's also a trainer for MTech, and she trains volunteer management volunteers across Canterbury. She has postgrad qualifications in safety and emergency management and holds a number of EM-related training certifications. A committed lifelong learner, Michelle is always looking to grow her knowledge and improve the volunteer experience while supporting other women in the field and contribute positively to the EM sector. So take it away, Michelle.
Thank you, Amy. Kia ora koutou, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm a volunteer with Taskforce Kiwi. So first of all, I'd just like to say thanks, Amy, for all this hard mahi to get this event out tonight. And thanks to the other speakers. I guess perfect example of the theme of this year's Volunteer Week. We really are weaving the people together tonight. So Taskforce Kiwi, it's a nationwide veteran-led disaster relief charity. And its purpose is to bridge the gaps in disaster response and recovery. And I'll talk a little bit about that more shortly. We're relatively new to New Zealand. We're formed in mid-2022. But the model we operate under is not new. So for those who don't know much about us and our evolution, in 2010, 7 ex-US Marines came together and responded in Haiti following the earthquake. And that started Team Rubicon. That Team Rubicon brand spread around the globe to a number of countries, and some of them have since rebranded. The one you may know best is Disaster Relief Australia, which is one of our closest partners. Others include React UK, which was formerly in the Team Rubicon stable as well, and Team Rubicon Canada and USA. So the model was tried and tested. In terms of our membership, like those other organisations, we attract a lot of ex-defence and emergency services personnel. So in our 570 members, we've got 32% women, which is really high in terms of volunteering and for the sector. And 80% of our volunteers are either current or former defence members or emergency services. And 20% of our volunteers come from the wider community. And amongst those from the wider community, we have a broad range of skills. We have trades, we have surveyors, we have lawyers, we have all types of skills that those other volunteers bring to the team. So we work to support other agencies, often working alongside them, and help them to fill some resourcing gaps by providing skilled volunteers. So examples of that might be providing logistics support, providing additional ground or aerial impact and damage assessment, or operating plant. And then we provide direct support to affected communities. So once the emergency services have helped communities through immediate challenges following the event itself, Taskforce Kiwi can come in and help affected communities pick up the pieces during the recovery phase. So we do that in a number of ways. It might be debris clearance after a fire or a flood. It might be stripping a flood damaged house, or it might be something completely different, like locating valuables in the debris that's left. So we will put together teams of volunteers to meet the needs of each community we work with, and so we'll pull together teams that have the skills that we need each time. So we continue to develop and expand our capabilities. Me personally, I joined Taskforce Kiwi in January 2023 when they'd put the call out to deploy volunteers to New South Wales following the 2022 floods. And I lived in New South Wales for many years of my life, and I thought that would be a great way to give back to my former state. So over I went. And I had such an amazing experience there that I later took on the voluntary role as the National Volunteer Experience Manager for Taskforce Kiwi. But I'm very much still an active volunteer, and I deploy as often as I can. As Amy mentioned, I've been a civil defence volunteer for many years, but I recognised with that first deployment with Taskforce Kiwi that it really complemented the work of emergency services and agencies so well, and provided another layer of support for affected communities. So after the initial response is over and the first responders have moved on, Taskforce Kiwi can continue making an impact and really help those communities. I decided to get fully behind it because I really believed in the purpose of Taskforce Kiwi, which is kind of twofold. So yes, we're there to provide direct support to communities following disasters, both here and internationally. But the second purpose is to provide a sense of purpose, identity, and community for veterans from both Defence Force and emergency services, so that they can continue to serve and communities get to benefit from all the skills that they bring when they come and volunteer with us. So in terms of my own experience, I work full-time for myself. I do my volunteering, both my role and my volunteering on top of this. And sometimes it can be a lot, but it just gives me so much. When I look back at what our small but mighty organisation has achieved so far in the last 2 years, I'm just incredibly proud to be a part of it. So far we've led or participated in 10 operations across 5 different countries, so New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Morocco, Vanuatu, and we've given 10,000 volunteer hours to affected communities following floods, cyclones, fires, and we've just made a difference for so many people in those communities. In terms of our work, often we don't get the glory jobs. Sometimes the work is really not glamorous and we're working in mud and dust and dirt, but the impact we make after response, and when people in those communities are thinking, what do we do now? How do we clear this rubble? How do we start repairing what we have? That's when we really add value. And sometimes it's the littlest things that would seem so insignificant to others that we do that just make such a huge impact for those people and allow them to take that first step towards recovery. I think, as Ali said, it's about lots of great people coming together with a common cause and all just wanting to do their best, and many hands make light work, but the camaraderie that you get across our volunteer teams is just something really, really special. And I've had some of the most amazing experiences volunteering with Taskforce Kiwi.
Sure, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along, we are also joined tonight by Michaela Height. So Michaela joins our panel tonight as a volunteer with the New Zealand Red Cross's Disaster Welfare Response Team, or DWIST, where she has been volunteering for the last 5 years, and she's recently stepped into a co-team lead role with the Kapirimana DWIST crew, so just outside of Wellington. Michaela values inclusion and equity and humanity, and she hopes to offer a perspective of being a young wahine finding her feet in the world of volunteering. sharing some insights about how volunteering has helped her gain confidence to take steps in her early career journey. So over to you, Michaela.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for having me here tonight. This is one of the small things along my journey that is quite a big step for me, speaking in front of people about volunteering. So thank you. Bear with me while I give you a little bit of an overview of who Red Cross, the Disaster Welfare and Support Team are, and what we do. So about the disaster welfare and support teams. So we're trained to provide psychosocial support to people after an emergency. For us, this looks like working alongside other agencies to understand what the welfare needs of people are. We could support setting up civil defence centres and provide psychological first aid to people. For me, the coolest thing about volunteering with the disaster welfare and support teams is that we are real people and we're all very dedicated to walking alongside other real people that are experiencing various things that come to light during a disaster event. So Red Cross is active in the wider community as well, and this plays a big part in building community resilience before and after event. So for us, several of our team members are also involved in the refugee support services through New Zealand Red Cross, Meals on Wheels, and as a team we often come together with communities through the Red Cross Good and Ready program, which looks at emergency and personal preparedness. Some of our team are also involved with the International Delegates program, and some have deployed in the past to the Pacific to help with more specialised skill sets like technology and WASH. So that's water, sanitation and hygiene. The fundamental principles of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement really do guide everything that we do as Red Cross people. So as soon as we put on our uniform, we feel a real sense of being a part of something bigger than just ourselves and our world. So in preparation for this panel tonight, I was reflecting on who we are as a disaster welfare and support team. So essentially we're a group of people from all different age ranges, backgrounds, skill sets and abilities. We're all united through I think empathy and compassion. So that brings us together as a team, and ultimately it helps us serve the community and serve the people that we work with. We understand that in times of crisis, people and communities may be experiencing emotional distress, and that's a normal part of an emergency event happening. So we go along and we provide a compassionate ear, a comforting presence, and we help link and navigate between other welfare services. We're really about people and empowering people to find solutions for themselves. And a mantra that we use, so from the toolkit of psychological first aid, is look, listen, and link. Then ko waio, who am I? So I decided to volunteer sitting at home watching the Nelson fires on TV. It was an event that was very close to home. So I'm from the top of the South Island, and I felt pretty helpless. I really just wanted to be there and give everyone a big hug and help out in some way. So I think for us, or for me, it's about really caring about what people are going through, and wanting to help out. So just some reflections on my personal journey as a volunteer. So the first couple of years, for the first couple of years of training, for me it was a lot of new things. I wouldn't consider myself a very practical person naturally, so I found it really great and great learning the mix of practical skills, exercises and theory. But I really did sit back for a while and I observed and tried to absorb as much as I could. I felt pretty shy and not very confident, so I couldn't think of anything worse than, for example, being a squad lead or even just using the radios scared me. One thing I'll say about the team is that the supportive environment of the Red Cross people, and I think people have touched on camaraderie, you really do feel that. So for me, it encouraged me to put myself out there, give things a go. I started to realize I can do hard things and I can help and make a difference. And I started getting a buzz out of more unfamiliar situations and being able to apply my more natural empathy skills with all of the new set of skills that I learnt. So after a couple of years with the team, my curiosity for the wider emergency management system took hold. And I think, like other women on today's call have reflected on, I had some opportunities that came up through the volunteering. So I had opportunities to keep learning, practicing, and contributing to the kaupapa, or the Red Cross kaupapa, in different ways. So since starting my journey with volunteering 5 years ago, I've had a few different roles at Red Cross and more recently at the National Emergency Management Agency. There was one thing that I did want to share if there are any kind of younger people on the call or people early career. If you're a bit shy, if you're quiet and you're observant, there's space for you here too. And one thing that I've learnt and might do a little bit differently if I were to start the whole journey again is like throw yourself into it as much as you can from the start, because you do really reap the benefits as much as you put in. Kia ora. That's me.
Oh, kia ora, Michaela. I couldn't give you the little emoji on that because I'm sharing my screen, but that warms my heart. I started my career volunteering in New Zealand with the New Zealand Red Cross, and so Michaela, that holds a special place in my heart. But I will move right along and introduce Natalie. So we're fortunate to have Natalie Giles with us as our last panel member. So Natalie has a diverse career portfolio, so starting in theater and event production, and then fintech or finance tech, I believe, and scaling systems abroad. So she started volunteering with the Wellington Emergency Response Team, or WERT, and the NZRC 8 back in 2016, and has never looked back. She's now one of the team leaders of the WERT and is delighted to be a part of such a dynamic volunteer team responding in the Wellington community and all across Aotearoa. So separate to her WERT and NZRT local volunteering, Natalie is also on several other rapid response surge registers and is sometimes called on to respond to large-scale humanitarian emergencies all over the world, either as part of an IT and telecoms emergency response unit, in information management, or to provide cash and voucher assistance to affected people. Last year, Natalie was awarded the Australasian Women in Emergencies Excellence Award for 2023 for an individual that has made an important contribution to emergency management and/or disaster resilience. So with that said, over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everyone. Really great to hear from the other panel members as well, with different diverse experiences. So I'm here today to talk about NZRTs. I'm part of Wellington Emergency Response Team, NZRT 8. NZRTs are teams of qualified first responders who support the CDM groups and their communities, deploying alongside emergency services and other agencies to provide surge support in emergencies. So volunteer response teams have been around in New Zealand for quite a while. WERT is 50 years old, more than 50 years old, with one member having been part of it for 30 years. And on that note, right now down in Canterbury, there's an event to give a bunch of NZRT members their long service awards. So shout out to those all members who are part of that ceremony and can't be here right now. So NZRTs are localised and the teams have different capabilities based on the local needs and hazards. Historically, urban rescue teams. These days, it's a wider framing of response. And the teams can have different organisational structures and operating models and CDM group and council relationships. But since 2019, we've been moving towards nationally consistent capabilities and standards and interoperability across a number of strands. Some are technical and some less so. The NZRTs have really broad capabilities depending on what's needed. So the foundation skills are like cordons, evacuations, reconnaissance and assessment, and general support. NZRT people are SIMS trained, so also surge staffing for EOCCs and ECCs, and I surged into the ECC and even the NCC for Tropical Cyclone Gabrielle. So depending on the team capabilities, other strands might include some combination of those you see on screen, you know, light rescue, flood response, storm response, etc., and some technical rescue strands, including out-of-region deployment capabilities as well. The excellent people at NEMA, one of whom is the amazing all-member Liz Smith, recently implemented a new formal accreditation process and all that goes with it. So the frameworks, the ops guidelines, and the governance, etc. So 14 teams have fully completed the accreditation process, and 2 teams are just ticking the last couple of boxes, and more teams coming through the pipeline as well. So each team member of an accredited team commits to attend a minimum of 100 hours training per year to maintain their operational status. NZRC, my team, was the guinea pig team. We were the first to go through the accreditation process in early 2022, and other teams rapidly followed. And having all the revised SOPs and frameworks was a great help when Auckland floods and Cyclone Gabrielle came along in February 2023, because NZRTs mobilised rapidly, including out of region. We had 190 volunteers deployed from all 16 NZRTs across the Motu, many of them for week-long stints. And there's 1,290 days of work contributed just to that response. And 8 regions were supported by NZRTs during these events. So NZRTs have deployed multiple times since then, but that was a big one for all of us. So I mentioned earlier about different teams having different setups, and WIRT is owned by WCC, but is completely self-administered. So it's us volunteer team members who do all the admin and the budgeting and the planning and the fundraising and the compliance, etc. And we have a co-team leadership structure in part because of that. So I'm a team lead, and I previously headed up the personnel team, and I'm proud of how over that time we've greatly increased the number or the ratio of wahine on the team. So yeah, in terms of my day job, I'm never quite sure how to answer that, as I have various threads. They each build on the other. I generally do freelance gigs, often self-employed like Michelle, or else fixed-term employment contracts with different organisations in New Zealand and abroad, mostly wrangling of one thing or another, sometimes in the arts or New Zealand-based organisations. However, as Amy said, I'm now on several other international emergency response rosters and several profiles, including the New Zealand Red Cross Delegates Program that Michaela mentioned. I'm often doing data wrangling for large-scale emergencies that need support with their data collection and analysis and information products to support decision-making for the response. And so in New Zealand SIMS terminology, that would be called intelligence function, but it's called IM in the Red Cross world, information management. So yeah, my professional and volunteer life is a life of contrast. Like Michaela said, practical and physical versus theory. 1 minute I'm training in light rescue with WIRT. Next minute I'm a Red Cross delegate coordinating systems across multiple countries to get cash assistance to displaced people who were affected by the crisis in Ukraine. And I'm back with my gumboots and PPE on with WIRT, helping salvage sodden sofas and do PSS for individuals and families after a flood, and then stage managing for an opera concert. So it's all changed. So I'm super grateful for everything I've learned, but most importantly, the committed people I've met and volunteered alongside, like diverse members of the community who give their time to support their communities, and the camaraderie as well, like Michelle mentioned. Because no matter how big or small the emergency, and no matter how many domestic and international government or intergovernment or non-government or auxiliary to government organisations respond, no matter how many financial and in-kind resources are mobilised, they all depend on the humans in the community, the trained volunteers, and even spontaneous volunteers, to do the do. So thank you to you all, and keep an eye on the NZRT Facebook page for updates and opportunities to join a team. And I'll hand back and thank you.
Kia ora, Natalie. Thank you. All right. As we move into kind of the second portion of our evening, I'm going to ask the lovely ladies to join me back on the screen for a bit of a panel speaker discussion. So while they're turning their cameras back on, I thought I would just take a quick second to explain some of the ground rules for the panel on this portion. So I have several questions for them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the question on the screen, and then to probably stop sharing my screen while they take an opportunity to answer. And they can either raise their hand, or I might just call on them or manually unmute them. So we'll see. It'll be a little bit of a game. But we will be keeping an eye on the clock during this portion, as we want to leave plenty of time for the Q&A session. So with that said, I'm going to bring the first question up. So I thought we would start off by talking a little bit about what this year's theme of Weave the People Together, or Whira Te Tangata, means to each of you guys as a volunteer.
Shall I grab that
Go
one?
for it, Michelle. Michelle and then Natalie.
Thanks, Amy. Well, as I said when I first started speaking, if this is an example of weaving the people together, I don't know what is. And, you know, the emergency management sector is a network of networks, and everyone is needed. When it's time for all hands on deck, those relationships that you have with others and other teams and other organizations are just so important. So to me, it means knowing that regardless of the uniform you're wearing, all of us contribute to making things better for affected communities. So the better we know each other and the more we know about each other's organisations, the better we can help communities in New Zealand, and that's why we all do it.
I don't think I can follow that one. I agree, that's why we all do it. But I think it's also, I think you spoke about weaving across teams and weaving across organisations and interacting to collectively improve and collectively deliver. And I think as well, it's weaving together our own teams within our own teams and within our own groups. There's nothing like knowing you have a bunch of people who have your back. And I think that goes not just when we're actually deploying or actually training, but also lots of mutual support with people that I might not otherwise engage with in my community, but who are very awesome members of a really cohesive team. And yeah, trying to make sure that our teams are reflective of the community that we serve and weaving together as a team. And then wider as well, weaving together the community. So whether it's at actual responses or whether it's public events, seeing how the disparate members of the public come together in support of each other is great. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie. Michaela?
So I thought about it from the sense of like the people that we have in our team as well. I think, yeah, Nat, you mentioned being reflective of the communities that we serve. I think, so even within our teams, we do weave different experiences and backgrounds together. So I can't think of any other places or groups to be involved in where you've got friendships with people that are of different age groups, to intergenerational friendships in that community sense as well. So yeah, that's one way that I think about it.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. I think we've had 3 really good answers to that first question. So if there are no objections, I might jump in with the second question, which I'm just taking an opportunity to type in, so I won't bother re-sharing the screen. But what have you found tough or a challenge with volunteering in your emergency response roles? Go for it, Allie.
It's a really good question. It's something that I think we've all reflected on. And a lot of the times we are dealing with very high stress situations. There's a lot of emotions within the communities that we are serving as well. And that, you know, you're never really prepared for some of the things that you are exposed to and some of the things that you're seeing, regardless of how much work you do leading up to it, or how much training you do when you're in the thick of it and you're a part of it. It's both very humbling and very confronting as well. And so particularly within the land search and rescue sector is, you know, we do deal with a lot of deceased and unfortunately a lot of body recoveries as well. And that can range from, you know, a number of different ages. I think one of the ones that really stuck with me was a 17-year-old girl that we pulled out of the water. And it's, you know, it's a really difficult situation to have to navigate your way through. You know, fortunately, we are in a position where we have the support from our organisation and the follow-up with that psychosocial as well. But it's certainly something that I wasn't quite expecting, but at the same time, really grateful for that experience because it makes you really appreciate what we have, but also the organisation that we volunteer within and the communities that we are able to serve and being able to bring that closure to people. But it's still very difficult.
Thank you, Ali. Leah, I think you also had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I would say mine probably comes off the back of what Ali just said. I think one of the challenges we face is the toll of witnessing those traumatic situations and dealing with the aftermath. So we often see communities and individuals affected by disasters, emergencies, and it can be, I suppose, pretty heart-wrenching at times. And I guess there's that challenge between empathy and emotional detachment. I do think you need a certain amount of emotional detachment at the time, operationally, where you can compartmentalise to a degree. And I think one of the challenges too is as a volunteer, it can be quite polarising. You might have been responded out to some particularly grisly scene, could have involved all sorts of bodily fluids, people who have died, nasty car accidents. You come home, you have a shower, you go back to cooking dinner, tuck your kid into bed, or go back to work. And I think you need to take the time to realise that what seems quite normal for us as volunteers is actually far from normal for most people. Again, we do have ways of coping with that. We do hot debriefs in the truck, we have formal debriefs, and we do have access to counselling services as well, which is fantastic. Yeah, so I guess the high pressure environment and uncertainty of emergency situations can be both mentally and physically challenging and exhausting. But it's also very rewarding and fulfilling. And I think in some of those really challenging and tricky call outs, you take those with you through your life. They may not affect you day to day, but there's always something, a little piece of those call outs or those emergencies that stick with you. And I think it's quite an honour to be a part of that with some people.
Thank you, Leah. Natalie, I think you also had your hand raised, or do you want me to keep going?
I think just super short. I just think what you've both said was totally true and very relevant. And the other really hard thing is that you always want to do more. So there's always more to do, and it's tough to wind up at the end of your shift or at the end of your deployment when there's still need out there and there's still work to do. So like Leah said, just need to detach and compartmentalise and keep going and know that you've contributed a lot already, and it's time for someone else to do the mahi in the next shift.
Ali?
That's a really good segue as well into the fact that sometimes we can't do it all, and sometimes we're just not up to it. And that's absolutely fine. You know, saying no to a call out, saying no to a response, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think that's one of the toughest things as a volunteer, is coming to terms with the fact that it's okay to do that, and that sometimes it's better to do that. Give someone else an opportunity, but also give yourself time so that you're better for the next round.
It's kind of like in the airplane, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first, you know, before you can help other people, and you don't do any good if you're out there unable to help yourself. So thank you. I think in the interest of time, maybe we revisit this topic later in the Q&A, but I'm going to go ahead with the third question for you ladies, which is, how has your volunteer experience enhanced your career? Like, what is one main thing that volunteering might have helped you with, either in your paid work or your studies? I'll leave the two of you to duke it out.
Thanks. You go first, Leah, if you like. No? Okay. So for me, my day job is all about risk reduction, readiness, and my volunteering reminds me why I do what I do. It keeps me humble and keeps me on purpose, because sometimes in my work it can be a little bit, how do I say it, a little bit thankless, and you don't see the fruits of your labor. It's work, 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 plan, plan, plan. But the actual disaster is a bit abstract. And my volunteering really makes me a better professional, because it reminds me it reminds me why I do what I do, because at the end of the day, it's all about reducing harm to communities we serve. So yeah, it feeds me and keeps me doing what I do. It's good for the soul.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Leah or Allie, I think you both were trying to raise your hands. Leah?
Okay. Yeah, you're dead right. It does take you back to the why. I think for me personally, because I have that unique perspective of being a volunteer for the organisation that I work for, and because I work in the readiness and recovery space as well, I get to serve on the front line as a volunteer, gain those valuable insights, the challenges, the opportunities, everything that is faced by both my team and the communities that we serve. And I get to bring that back and leverage the knowledge to try and drive some positive change out of it, and improve the way that fire and emergency connects with their communities and some of the educational programs that we deliver. So I think too, it gives me sort of ways where I can identify areas for growth and development, which only comes from being out there on the front line and seeing where the risks are and looking at ways that we can help mitigate them.
Thanks, Leah. I think, Michaela, you have your hand up.
I completely tautoko what the ladies have said before about volunteering grounding you with purpose. That's been absolutely valuable to me as I've moved on my career path as well. Something else that I have done through volunteering, which has helped me on my career, is using it, like the opportunities that come up and the stretch chances that you get to test yourself and try new skills out as a bit of a testing ground for things that you might want to bring over into your workspace as well. So I've thrown myself, for example, into training a team, which is quite separate to, what my current work is, but it might serve me a little bit further down the track if I've got the skill sets to be able to, teach to some degree Sims, or yeah, so that's something from me.
Thanks, Michaela. Ali?
Yeah, no, so I probably taken a little bit of a different approach. So my BAU role is as a group welfare manager for the Wellington Regional Emergency Management Office. And being a land search and rescue volunteer has helped me identify gaps within emergency management and within the search and rescue sector. And so I've actually utilised that to do my best to better both sectors. And so I've, for my sins, have decided to partake in a PhD where I'm looking at both emergency management and the search and rescue sectors and how we can actually align them and utilise our volunteers for, you know, the better purpose and within those responses. So it's to me, it's been an absolutely fantastic opportunity for my career, but it's also led me on to further study as well as trying to enhance the sector in general.
Sure. Thank you, Ali. And Natalie, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, so I think
Awesome.
like several people here, it's been great to have some opportunities, but just not to repeat what everyone else has said, at its most simplistic level, volunteering has helped my career by helping me realise what I want my career to be, and definitely been moving more in this direction a lot more, and changing focus to the emergency response and preparedness side of things. Thanks.
Excellent, thanks. And I think quite a bit of this conversation also leads into our final panel question for this evening, which is, what's your why? Why did you choose to spend your time both with ā here tonight talking to us and in those regular volunteering roles? Michelle?
I feel like I'm always going first. Thanks, Amy. I just had a couple of things to add about the perspective specifically around women. So I'm here tonight because it's part of my purpose is to make sure that women get great opportunities in emergency management. Some but not all of the sector, very male, I guess, dominated. I'm not quite sure if that's the right word, historically. And I love seeing women get leadership opportunities in emergency management. I think women have a unique perspective, particularly that they see things slightly differently, particularly around welfare and some of the things that we get involved in. And I just think responses are better when you've got all of the perspectives represented. So I like to think that I support other women in emergency management, and getting this opportunity to talk to women who might be considering getting involved or that they might see it sometime in the future. That's why I wanted to talk here tonight and just be involved in showcasing some of the amazing things that women in the sector do. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Leah.
Yeah, I think the why is a harder one because I think why can change over time. Sometimes what started out as your motivation or your why, it fluctuates. But I guess ultimately, for me, it comes down to if you can, you should. So, you know, every time when the siren goes at 2 a.m. and I'm tucked up and comfy in bed, I think, you know, there's someone out there who needs help to the point that they've rung 111. So they're afraid, vulnerable, concerned, distressed, And sometimes that wait for help can seem like forever. So if I'm in a position to be able to be that help, then I will be. But a little bit the same tonight, why I'm spending this time here with Or and everybody here, because it sits out of my comfort zone in so many ways as well. I guess it's not about me. It's about supporting fellow volunteers and women in volunteerism. It's about building connections, learning, empowering. And it's, I guess, ultimately about being involved in something that's bigger than myself, that could leave a lasting impact long after my service has ended.
Lots of head nods in agreement on that one. Michaela.
Yeah, I think my why has changed over time. Initially, it was very much about, caring. Well, it still is caring for people and wanting to, walk alongside people when they're going through crap. I think for me, I've been through my own journey with personal resilience and challenges in life, and I've learned a lot of things along the way. So I think the walking alongside someone is my why. And then to develop on that, it's become, I guess, within the disaster welfare and support team, building up a team to be really good at that as well. So I think my why is now about believing in a cause, and wanting to see it succeed and make really good impact for people. So my why has developed over time.
Thanks, Michaela. Any final comments from Natalie Ali?
Sure. So I agree with the mission driven and the purpose driven and being part of something bigger than yourself. But my other why is because I enjoy it, because I found my peeps. We've got a whole load of good humans with like strong bodies and smart brains and kind hearts who know when to step up and when to step back and learn from each other, and everyone's got each other's backs. And I think the team as a whole is stronger, much stronger than the sum of its parts. It's really good to be mission driven, but also have that camaraderie together.
Excellent. Well, thank you, ladies. I think that concludes the end of kind of the panel discussion section that we had, wanting to save quite a bit of time for some open Q&A. I do have a slide that's a lovely hands raised, but I won't bother actually sharing that back because I think having your faces up here and being able to see you answer the questions is more important. So I note that we have, I think, a couple questions in the chat. So Natasha has asked in the chat if it's challenging to maintain consistency in volunteer groups, if there's a lot of movement of people. So if anybody wants to answer that.
I'm probably a perfect example of that because I've been a volunteer with many different volunteer groups just due to where work's taken me. Within Land Search and Rescue New Zealand, we have a competency frameworks. So the whole concept of that is that when you've reached your certain competencies, you should be able to be deployable anywhere within New Zealand, and it's interchangeable within teams. And I think that most organisations will have that. The only thing that's lacking with that is more that camaraderie and the understanding of team dynamics, which you don't necessarily get if you're not training and working with your team. However, in saying that, we're also really fortunate within Land Search and Rescue that if we have training, regional trainings that we can't make, they will provide us accommodation and travel to go to other regions to pursue that training. And so as a result of that, I've gotten to know a lot of different groups and a lot of different people within different groups across New Zealand. And that's been really beneficial in my journey, particularly when I have moved roles across the motu. And I'm able to just really slot into other groups quite easily. Within a couple of training sessions, they already know who I am. They understand where I've come from. They understand the competencies that I have, and they know that it relates to what they do. But also chances are that I've trained with these people previously in other areas for various trainings nationally. So we are able to mitigate that, and it's not as much of an issue, I think, nowadays with online trainings as well, and the introduction of Teams and Zooms and Skypes post-COVID. So we're able to do a lot more with that too. So it's not as relevant as what it used to be in that sense.
Thank you, Ali. Any other comments? Otherwise, might ask Liz which of her questions she'd like to have answered.
Kia ora everyone, great to see you tonight. I've just put these 2 questions in the chat because they've kind of come up from our volunteer survey. We can always do more to recognise our volunteers, so I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on how we, any new ideas on how we recognise our volunteers in their employers and families. And also another theme that came through, because I'm going to do 2 for 1 with my question while I've got the airtime. How can we improve the utilisation of volunteer organisations and civil defence emergencies? I know there's challenges where sometimes our tasking agencies don't understand the volunteer organisations' capabilities, or they're risk adverse to using volunteers because there's no assurance process. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Go for it, Ali.
I'll answer it in order. So we do have an employer recognition program, and we also have a whānau recognition program. So what that generally involves is every year there's funding towards each group which are able to put on the likes of barbecues or movie nights, or something to bring whānau together, but also to bring employers together to be able to say thank you. And the employer recognition program also is around trying to encourage employers to give volunteers a little more leeway with leave when it comes to needing to be deployed, particularly within work hours. And I see that's another question in the chat as well. So we do have those couple of programs going on, and I think it's becoming increasingly more, there's certainly a need within volunteer organisations to adapt, but it's also a need within employers to be able to be adaptable as well, and that's starting to be recognised more and more, and we are starting to see some changes with it, but there's certainly a long way that we can all go with it. To answer your second question, that's pretty much what my PhD is on, is looking at how we can better utilise these volunteers and our volunteer organisations, how we can look at recruitment, retention and recognition to enable them to do what they do within the wider sector, not just within our own little organisations. And the cross-pollination within across organisations within the emergency management sector as well. So give me a few more years and I might have some answers for you, Liz.
Leah, go for it.
Yeah, I think Fire and Emergency, being a government organisation with a whole bunch of volunteers within it, we also have a lot of programs in place. So we have recognition, obviously, for our employers as well and our families. Fire and Emergency are heavy in National Volunteer Week. We have Celebrating Success Awards. So these are run annually where our peers can nominate us for I think there's about 4 or 5 different categories. That's not just open to paid staff, that's for volunteers as well. So that's it's actually quite an honour when you get nominated by your peers for an award like that. Fire and Emergency are in a position to give us reimbursement for things like training, childcare when we're away for courses. They offer us flexibility with training and pathways because obviously they know we've all got jobs as well. And we do have access to things like health checks, which they offer to us, and we get things like flu vaccinations, etc., access to counselling, psychologists. And that support isn't just for us, but it can be for our families as well. So I think that's really a big part of recognising the value that we have towards fire and emergency, because recognising your whānau is part of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah. Michaela, Michelle, Natalie, anything that you guys wanted to add to that, or shall we move to the next?
Nothing to add.
Yeah. Leah, I think going down the chat, you also had a question directed straight at you, which was about challenges that you encounter both volunteering and working for the same organization.
Yeah. I suppose there's very little switch off time. So, and the lines can get blurred a little bit between, I suppose, who's looking at me as to whether I'm wearing my Chief Fire Officer hat or my Community Readiness and Recovery hat. When up with working and volunteering for the same company, it can lead to burnout, I suppose, or emotional fatigue, because you've got the stresses of work, and then you may come home and be exposed to trauma for hours and hours on end. So yeah, I think too that sometimes there can be conflicting priorities within the roles that I have, and there are some biases that I need to be or remain aware of, because I experience the challenges as a volunteer, and then I can sort of face the opposing organisational challenges as well as an employee. So yeah, it does bring about good opportunity though, like I said before, I think to be on that front line and to be able to bring back those challenges to the decision table. It's a really important aspect of what I'm able to do, and I count myself quite lucky to be in that position, or fortunate.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah. Did anybody else feel free to turn your cameras on and jump in with any questions?
So Amy, I think there was a question in the chat as well with someone saying, do you find it difficult to be able to be released from your BAU employment to volunteer in emergencies? And I think there's been other people asking about balancing professional responsibilities with your volunteer commitments as well. I think for me, it helps that I'm often a freelancer or do short-term contracts. I've mostly chosen over the last 9 years to take flexible consultancies or flexible fixed-term work to allow the time and space to do emergency response, both volunteering and also paid at super short notice. So for me, I balance things kind of episodically or intermittently, like these months I'm doing this, or these weeks I'm doing this, or these days I'm doing this, one after the other, rather than by allocating the same amount of time per week to do volunteering kind of on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of how I manage it. And I think we've talked a bit about employer recognition as well. And just a reminder, I know there's a bunch of people on this call who are also sort of self-employed as well, and try to balance their own work commitments and sometimes kind of take the corresponding loss of income to best do their volunteering, which is an absolute privilege to be in a position to be able to do that.
For me, I'm self-employed, so I'm always on contract to various organisations for programs of work, but I have a clause in my contract about being a volunteer and that it's important to me, and that I may need to reschedule if I need to be deployed. I've only ever had to use that clause once, and I cleared all of my work for 10 days, and then I didn't end up deploying because I was actually out of the country and I couldn't get back in the country in time to get on a flight. So I ended up doing that. Yeah, not ideal. But it is a real challenge, and I know in Taskforce Kiwi, we try to really instill in our members the fact that we want you to deploy, but only if your life is okay to do so. So no one's penalised for not deploying. We don't, there's no black marks against your name if you can't go this time, because it's really important to us that you get your priorities straight in life. And yeah, home, family first. You've got to be okay. Like we said earlier in the discussion, you have to be okay to go there. If you're super stressed and you're under pressure, it's probably not your time to raise your hand, and that's okay.
Excellent. Well said, Michelle. It's a very good point. Michaela, I see you have your hands up.
Yeah, echoing what was just said about your priorities in the moment. You look after yourself, your family, get yourself in order first. So, and there's no, negative views if you say no to a deployment. For me, so I've worked, both at Red Cross and at NEMA. It's helped to have the conversation up front about deployment and what that looks like, what communication you need to have with your manager to be able to do that. Naturally, them both being involved in emergency response, during their BAU, there's going to be some kind of trade-offs there. For me, I have like an understanding about what types of events I might be able to deploy to, and then some that I won't. So I might not get all of the opportunities for every single event. But yeah, I do have like an understanding and agreement. But I think clear communication and understanding what the mutual expectations are quite important to get to that point.
Thanks, Michaela. Jennifer, I see you also have your hand up. Not sure if it's to comment or ask another question.
Oh, I've got a question. And my question for anybody who cares to answer is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to other women volunteering or working in the sector?
Go for it, Leah.
Keep fighting the good fight and keep doing it, because we need women in emergency management. We need women in emergency response services. And I think ideally we need a lot more women in leadership roles. Sadly, we have issues around retaining women in some of these areas. And I think when we look at volunteering going forward, it's something collectively, if we're in it already, we have that responsibility to put some effort into thinking about how we can improve this. So, but if you're not in it, I would say do it. It's a very rewarding space to work in and volunteer in. And yeah, if you're in it, just keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, I would say, and Amy, you and I have talked about this before. I've talked about the imposter syndrome that women feel in this sector. And sometimes we're fighting against ourselves and years of conditioning as women, but we've just got to be bold and take up space, because we add so much. our perspectives are so valuable, and we make great leaders, great empathetic, compassionate, thoughtful leaders. So we need more leaders, as Leah said. So, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. Get in there, because emergency management is better with women in it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Michelle. And Michaela, to build on that.
Exactly what Michelle said. I think the thing that came to my mind with that question was like, it's okay to be yourself, and actually, like, we need diversity of thought and experience around the table in emergency management. So it's okay to be yourself, and you might not think like everyone else, but it's good to ask questions. So yeah, that's my bit.
Anything more to add on that, ladies, or on to
Yes,
the...
I agree. Just do it. And I also agree with Michaela about ask questions. It's okay to ask questions and bring your perspective to the table. It's also okay just to make adjustments, just to keep tweaking little things, changing things, especially about like team culture, team dynamics, etc. We've got an increased number of females in our team right now than we had a few years ago, but we've also got a massive number of allies and people who are super supportive of others stepping up and doing things in a different style of leadership than had been traditional in the team. So yeah, I think things don't happen overnight, but there's definitely potential there to keep on tweaking, adjusting, and making things happen. Thanks.
Kira. Thanks, Natalie. And just keeping an eye on time, I'm going to move on to a question that I see that Kath has dropped in the chat, which acknowledging her and saying thank you for joining us, and just wanting to ask the question, why do you choose to volunteer with ā?
I think that's maybe a question for you and Jen. We do a whole lot more time volunteering with ā. There may be some of us other panelists. Super grateful for being a member of this excellent organisation, just the increased visibility of what's already happening and the things that ā is pushing for. So really grateful for the time that the ā committee team put into this. So thanks.
Natalie, and Ali, I think you were raising your hand a second ago as well.
Oh, I was about to say the exact same thing. I think that's a question for Jen and Amy. But I certainly feel that being part of ā is, you know, especially coming from Southland, where it's very, very male dominated, and search and rescue, which is very male dominated. It was actually really refreshing to come to Wellington and to meet Amy, to meet Jen, and to be invited along to ā and being like, oh my goodness, there's a community of like-minded women who are able to share those experiences and provide advice and mentorship, and just, it's very refreshing. So thank you, ladies.
Can I just add a little bit to that? So yes, Amy and I are volunteers with organizing and coordinating events and stuff. And Amy's volunteered a ton of her time to coordinate this for everyone tonight. So acknowledge Amy for that hard work. But the reason ā is so valuable and so important is because of its members. And so what we do in this volunteering role is just facilitate those opportunities for those members to come together. And if our membership doesn't contribute and volunteer with your thoughts and your ideas and your experiences and share those with other women and help lift other women in the sector up, then there's no point in having ā. So yeah, technically our members aren't volunteers, but the reality is that we wouldn't be able to do anything if our members didn't actively contribute and participate and support each other. There's a small committee, but the committee is reliant on on the amazing women that exist and operate across Australasia.
Kia ora, Jen. Thank you. Yeah, just kind of echoing everything that Jennifer said. You know, I choose to give my time back and take up the New Zealand co-lead hat with Jen because I think it's just fantastic to be a part of an organization of women and other allies, people who are interested in risk reduction and emergency services and just generally helping others, but also helping lift, support, and bolster, you know, other women. It's something that I hadn't come across, you know, a real dedicated to women organization either back in the US where I started in this field or here. And as soon as I heard about, I went, oh, this is fantastic. And I need to put in what I want to get out of the organization. And so that's why I raised my hand, even though quite like Michaela, this is very much outside of my comfort zone. And I'm not a huge fan of, you know, putting my face up on the screen all night, but you know, I'll do it for you lovely ladies. So yeah, I think maybe one final question, either Miriam's in the chat or if anybody wants to just ask it right now, and then just keeping an eye on the clock. Okay, well, Miriam has put a great question in the chat, which was about when you were responding as volunteers, if some of you could share about how community education or public education enhances the effectiveness of that response role.
I can speak a little bit to that. So SAR prevention is obviously quite a big part of what we do, but of course as volunteers it's really difficult to be part of something unless we're responding, if that makes sense. You know, we all know that community development and the resilience aspect is so important to any kind of response, and within the search and rescue sector it's exactly the same. If we can educate communities, if we can educate schools, if we can educate the demographics who are more inclined to be missing, lost or injured in our wilderness environments, well then it makes our jobs a lot easier. We certainly have do try to do quite a bit around prevention within schools, within programs, and then of course through advertising. We do sweeps of some of the great walks like the Tongariro crossing during those busy periods to try and prevent fatalities from happening, because that seems to be one of our biggest drags in New Zealand, is that particular crossing and people not being prepared. So there's quite a bit that we can do, but again it's just coming down to resources around prevention and the resilience within our communities.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali. So just with an eye on the clock, Leah, if you wanted to answer as well.
It's okay, I'm aware of the time, I know, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have opened it back up again without looking at the clock a bit more. But just a real quick plug. We got a lot of interest and a lot of really positive reactions when we started talking about New Zealand National Volunteer Week and kind of doing this panel with these 5 lovely ladies and their organizations. So just wanted to let everybody on the call tonight know that this is kind of kicking off a mini fortnightly session starting from kind of the end of July, likely into early September, where each of these organizations is going to have a full night, shorter period, about an hour, but to focus on multiple different women and the different volunteer roles within each of those organizations. So just to let you guys know that you should be seeing some advertisement and some signups. You can come to one, you can come to all of them, or you can just listen to them online afterwards, but giving you a big plug for the different dates and organizations. And with that said, I think we're going to do a closing karakia. So, mi mahi tahe tato mo te aranga o te katoa, humie, huie, ta kie. So, Thank you all for joining us tonight and for being a part of the amazing awe and celebration of weaving the people together.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks,
Ka
everyone.
kite, and we'll send the recording out and the link to it online. If you have any final questions for any of the speakers or presenters, feel free to email them either directly to me or to the info at our email address, and one of us will make sure that some of the panel speakers get a chance to respond to any questions or save them for the next session with that organization.
Thanks, Amy. On behalf of all of the speakers, thank you so much for organising this for us. And you've just done such an amazing job and made it all really easy for us. So we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Kia thanks, Michelle.
Tau toko that, Amy. And I'll see you at the next event. I got a lot out of it too with the speakers, so thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to hear everyone's stories. So thank you all
Yeah.
for being a part of tonight.
Thank you to all the supporters who came along.
Ka kite.
Thanks, everyone.